Did you ever hear something so unexpected it makes the whole world stop for a second? Because that's exactly what just happened. Germany, yes, the same Germany known for precision, power, and pride, just said something about the Philippines that has world leaders looking very uncomfortable right now. It wasn't an insult. It was worse. It was admiration. Raw public admiration. The kind that exposes how much the world truly depends on us, even when they never say it out loud. And trust me, once you hear what Germany admitted, you'll realize this isn't just flattery, it's a warning. If you're interested in this topic, hit the like button, subscribe, and type interested in the comments, and I will give you a heart. When the German chancellor took the stage at the Berlin Global Labor Conference last month, no one expected the Philippines to even be mentioned. The event was about automation, workforce shortages, and Europe's aging population. The usual political talk that fills rooms with handshakes and hollow promises. But then, out of nowhere, she said something that made every delegate pause mid-sip of their coffee. If Germany wants to remain standing the next 20 years, we will need to learn from the Philippines, not just hire them. The room went silent. You could feel the unease ripple through the crowd. Think about it. A nation that rebuilt itself from the ashes of 2 world wars, that leads Europe in engineering, industry, and medicine, admitting that its future might depend on Filipinos. That wasn't flattery. That was an alarm bell wrapped in respect. What she said next hit even harder. Filipinos have mastered something the rest of the world forgot: the balance between work, compassion, and endurance. Our hospitals, our care systems, even our supply chains rely on their spirit. They are not our workers, they are our teachers. Teachers. Germany, the country known for its discipline and excellence, just called Filipinos teachers, not laborers, not migrants, teachers. And yet, behind those words was a confession the world could no longer hide. Germany, like much of Europe, is facing a crisis they can't fix internally. Their population is aging faster than they can replace it. Nearly 22% of Germany's citizens are now over the age of 65, and by 2035, that number could rise to 1/3. Hospitals are understaffed, nursing homes are overwhelmed, factories are struggling to fill shifts, they need workers, but more importantly, they need people with heart. That's where Filipinos come in. In 2024 alone, over 26,000 Filipino healthcare professionals were deployed across Europe, with Germany taking the lead. And according to the German Federal Employment Agency, they expect that number to double by 2030. Because, as one German hospital director admitted, when a Filipino nurse enters a room, patients heal faster. Not because of medicine, but because of warmth. Now let's stop and think about that. We're talking about a country famous for efficiency and systems admitting that human connection, something you can't measure in productivity reports, is what's keeping their hospitals alive. But here's the irony. While the world praises Filipinos for saving their systems, they rarely talk about what that means for the Philippines itself. Behind every nurse in Berlin, there's a child in Quezon missing their mother's graduation. Behind every caregiver in Munich, there's a husband in Cavite counting the months till she comes home. Germany's compliment was the truth the world didn't want to say out loud, that the global north survives because of the emotional and physical labor of nations like the Philippines, that every smile in a German ward, every recovered patient, every restored family is built on the sacrifice of someone who left their own behind. Now, you might think this is just about healthcare. It's not. Filipinos are quietly propping up entire industries in Europe, from logistics to IT support, from aviation maintenance to education. We are the invisible force keeping the machine running. The European Chamber of Commerce recently published a report calling Filipino workers the new backbone of global reliability. And yet, how often do you see that headline? Never. Because it's not something the West wants to advertise, that their stability depends on us. Let me tell you why Germany's statement matters more than most people realize. This wasn't charity, it wasn't pity, it was a geopolitical confession. Europe's largest economy is admitting that without the Filipino work ethic, that rare blend of intelligence, empathy, and humility, their entire social structure could collapse. But the real question is this: if Germany can admit it publicly, what's stopping other countries from doing the same? The US, Canada, Japan, they all know the truth. They just don't want to say it out loud because acknowledgement means accountability. It means they'd have to give credit where it's long overdue. And here's where it gets fascinating. When that clip of the chancellor's speech hit social media, it spread like wildfire, not just among Filipinos, but among policy circles. French newspapers called it a diplomatic shockwave. British outlets said it was a wake-up call to Western arrogance. But the response that caught my eye came from Singapore. One political analyst said Germany didn't just praise the Philippines, it exposed how fragile the West has become without them. Think about that. Fragility disguises superiority. For decades, Western nations built systems designed to keep the world dependent on them. But now, those same systems are being quietly powered by us. Filipino nurses, Filipino engineers, Filipino educators, holding up the very nations that once treated us as second-tier labor. Now, before we continue, I want you to pause and think about this. How many times have you heard people joke about Filipinos being everywhere? Airports, hospitals, ships, kitchens, construction sites. Well, here's the truth. We're not everywhere by accident. We're everywhere because the world fell apart. And when it did, Filipinos showed up to fix it. If that doesn't make you proud, I don't know what will. And if you're watching this right now, I want you to type respect in the comments, because Germany finally said what every other nation has been too proud to admit. The Philippines is not the world's backup plan, it's the world's backbone. But the real story doesn't end there, because what Germany said next, behind closed doors, wasn't just praise. It was a plan, a strategy that could change everything for the Filipino workforce, and not necessarily for the better. Because while the world is applauding us in public, what's being negotiated in private might be the biggest trade-off of all. And that's exactly what we'll uncover next. When the cameras turned off after that speech in Berlin, that's when the real conversation began. And it wasn't about praise anymore. Behind closed doors, Germany's government quietly initiated talks with labor ministries across Asia, including the Philippines. Not for charity, not for diplomacy, but for survival. Documents leaked by a European labor think tank in August 2025 revealed something astonishing: a proposed strategic labor partnership between Germany and the Philippines. On paper, it sounds like a dream. Higher pay, safer working conditions, faster visa processing for Filipinos. But dig deeper and you'll see what it really is: a desperate move to lock in the Filipino workforce before other countries grab them first. You see, Germany isn't just complimenting the Philippines, they're competing for us. They're racing against time. Because while they were busy automating and outsourcing, they forgot one thing: machines can't replace compassion. And that's something only Filipinos bring to the table. Now let's put this in perspective. According to Germany's Federal Statistics Office, the country is projected to face a shortfall of 7 million skilled workers by 2035. And that's not a typo. 7 million. That's more than the entire population of Hong Kong. The biggest gap? Healthcare and caregiving, which is exactly where Filipinos shine. So what does Germany do? They open the floodgates. They've already funded recruitment offices in Manila, Cebu, and Davao, offering direct language training, visa sponsorships, and relocation packages for Filipino nurses. They're even negotiating to fast-track permanent residency for those who serve 5 years in German hospitals. Sounds generous, right? But here's where it gets dark. Every Filipino leaving means one less nurse in a Philippine hospital, one less engineer in our infrastructure projects, one less teacher shaping the next generation. The same record-breaking migration that brings billions in remittances is also quietly bleeding the country dry. Let's not sugarcoat it. Germany's admiration is a mask for dependency, and dependency always comes with a cost. In fact, according to a 2025 report by the Asian Development Bank, the Philippines now ranks 1 in healthcare worker migration across Asia, but 75 in domestic healthcare availability. We're exporting health, but importing shortage. Hospitals across Luzon and Visayas have begun reporting staff-to-patient ratios of 1 nurse to 25 patients, far above the WHO's safe limit of 1 to 6. It's a silent crisis that no politician wants to talk about because it's profitable. Those billions in remittances keep the peso stable, keep the economy moving, and keep the illusion alive that everything's fine. But everything's not fine. In the same breath that Germany praises Filipino resilience, it benefits from Filipino absence. The same strength they admire abroad is the weakness we feel at home. It's the ultimate trade-off. We build their hospitals, but our own patients wait in line for hours. We teach their kids English, but our schools still lack teachers. We repair their cities while ours crumble in traffic and neglect. You want to know the irony? The German press called it a partnership of equals. But tell me, how equal is a relationship where one side takes our talent and the other side loses its lifeline? Germany's move is strategic, yes, but it's also a mirror reflecting what every Western nation is planning. The UK, Canada, Japan, South Korea, all are quietly drafting similar labor deals, offering higher wages to lure Filipinos away. And it's working. The Philippine Overseas Employment Administration, POEA, reported that in just the first half of 2025, over 760,000 Filipinos were deployed overseas, a 15% jump from last year. That's nearly 1 million people leaving within 6 months. And here's the painful part. Most of them are young. The average OFW age is just 29. The very generation that should be driving the nation forward is instead driving other nations' economies. And let's be real, can you blame them? Who wants to stay in a system where merit doesn't matter unless you know someone? Where taxes go up, salaries go down, and politicians treat public funds like personal wallets? Germany knows this, the world knows this. That's why they're not just recruiting, they're harvesting. They're collecting the best minds and hardest workers the Philippines has to offer, while the country itself struggles to retain hope. But here's the twist. This isn't just Germany's fault. This is a wake-up call for the Philippines itself. Because the more we export our excellence, the less we invest in our future. Every time we celebrate another record-breaking year in remittances, we forget that it came from another record-breaking wave of separation. Families torn apart, children growing up without parents, professionals leaving because home doesn't feel like home anymore. Germany's admiration is a compliment we can't afford to take lightly, because behind every thank you lies a question. What happens when the Philippines finally runs out of people to give? But let that sink in. So yes, Germany's statement shocked the world, but it also revealed a truth most nations are too afraid to say. The Philippines has become the world's emergency backup plan. When their systems fail, when their population ages, when their industries collapse, they call us. And that's not just flattery, that's dependence. So here's the question we should be asking. How long will we keep saving everyone else while no one saves us? Do you believe it's time the Philippines stopped being the world's crutch and started being its equal? Type enough in the comments. Because in segment 3, we're diving into the part that no government wants you to hear. How this so-called partnership could reshape not just the economy, but the identity of the Filipino people forever. Let's call it what it really is. This is not just about Germany needing Filipino workers. It's about the world realizing what happens when Filipinos start saying no. Because let's face it, if every Filipino abroad decided to come home tomorrow, global industries would crumble faster than a sandcastle in a typhoon. Think I'm exaggerating? Let's break it down. The German Care Association openly admits that 1 out of every 5 nurses in major hospitals are Filipino. In Saudi Arabia, Filipinos make up 60% of the skilled hospital workforce. In the UK's NHS system, over 43,000 Filipino nurses are currently registered, more than any other foreign nationality. In Hong Kong, 200,000 Filipino domestic workers keep their city running, their children fed, their elders cared for. Remove Filipinos from the global equation, and the world stops spinning. That's not pride talking, that's math. Now here's where the story takes a turn no one saw coming, because for the first time, Filipinos are beginning to realize it too. What Germany said didn't just shock politicians, it lit a fuse. It made Filipinos everywhere ask the same question. If the world depends on us this much, why are we still begging for respect? It's not arrogance, it's awakening. You see, for decades, Filipinos were taught to see migration as survival. Go abroad, send money home, and you've done your part. But now, younger Filipinos, engineers, caregivers, entrepreneurs are starting to see something deeper. They're realizing that the world's dependency is leverage. That being the backbone of the global economy means we have the power to set terms, not just accept them. And that's what scares world leaders the most. Because if the Philippines ever decided to unite its global workforce under one coordinated voice, imagine it, a collective of 12 million Filipinos in over 100 countries saying we want better contracts, better treatment, and a say in the future we're building, the entire system would have to listen, not out of kindness, but necessity. That's why Germany's statement wasn't just admiration, it was an accidental revelation, a moment of honesty that exposed the imbalance of the global order. And here's what's even more fascinating. Germany isn't the first to admit it, just the first to say it out loud. Japan has been quietly expanding its technical intern training program, prioritizing Filipino applicants because, in their own words, Filipinos adapt faster, learn faster, and lead with heart. The Middle East has been lobbying for new visa extensions to keep Filipino workers longer. Even Canada's immigration department recently confessed that Filipino workers have the highest retention rate of any nationality in their skilled labor programs. Everyone's making plans to keep us because they finally realize they can't replace us. But back home, what are we doing with that truth? That's where the conversation needs to shift, because what good is global power if it doesn't translate into progress at home? The Philippines sends the world the best nurses, the best teachers, the best engineers, yet our local hospitals, schools, and factories are running on fumes. We train world-class talent and export it like it's our only natural resource. That's not development, that's dependence in reverse. And here's the punchline. Germany didn't just compliment Filipinos, they unintentionally exposed how broken the Philippine system is. Because when a foreign leader says, we need to learn from the Philippines, what they're really saying is, why aren't Filipinos leading their own country the same way they lead ours? That's the uncomfortable truth. We've proven to the world that we can manage global corporations, care for millions, lead teams, and stabilize entire sectors, just not within our own borders. Why? Because we've been conditioned to believe that leadership is something foreign, that respect has to be earned abroad before it's recognized at home. But that's starting to change, slowly. You can see it in the new generation of overseas Filipinos who are returning home not just with money, but with mindset. They've seen systems that work. They've experienced governments that listen. They've lived in societies that reward effort, not connections, and they're bringing that energy back. Every balikbayan who comes home with new skills, every OFW who invests in a local business, every Filipino abroad who funds education for their barangay, they're not just sending money, they're sending transformation. And here's the kicker, the world can sense it. The same countries that once saw Filipinos as workers are now watching nervously, realizing that a united, empowered Filipino workforce could shift global power dynamics. Because once you stop seeing yourself as the help and start seeing yourself as the foundation, everything changes. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine the Philippines creating a global Filipino index, a program that tracks every contribution made by Filipinos abroad. Imagine that data being presented to the UN, showing in hard numbers how many lives we touch, how many industries we sustain, how much global GDP we generate. Imagine that being used as leverage to negotiate fairer treatment, labor rights, and economic cooperation. That's not a dream, that's strategy. Germany's statement was never just about admiration, it was about acknowledgement, a reluctant confession that the very nations who built their success stories on innovation and intellect are now being held together by Filipino compassion and grit. And you know what? That's our superpower. Not just our work ethic, but our humanity, the kind of strength that isn't loud, but lasts. So here's where I'll leave you. Germany's shock wasn't a random event. It was the first domino in a chain reaction that's going to rewrite how the world sees the Philippines. We are not just the world's workers. We are the world's teachers, healers, builders, and believers. The quiet storm that kept nations alive while they were too proud to notice. And now, finally, the world is realizing that you can copy our systems. You can borrow our ideas, but you can't replicate our soul. If you believe it's time Filipinos stop asking for recognition and start demanding it, type power in the comments. Because make no mistake, the world isn't just praising the Philippines anymore. It's preparing for the day we finally realize that we don't need their permission to lead.